Well, good afternoon, everybody. We are here. They did have court this morning, but it was not a live court feed. So we are going to be watching a different style of court feed today. So please don't trying to get to where I can hear myself. Thank you. So we will be watching a different style of court feed. I don't know why they did not go live today, but they did not. But we do have this morning's feed, and we're going to hop into that right now.
You can bring in the jury.
Give me a second to do get it up on the scene.
And Your Honor, the state does have a request regarding playing an impeachment video.
All right, we'll put that on the record when the jury comes in.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Okay, I do not have a way to zoom in. I apologize. This is the only feed that I have. I'm going to zoom through.
The witness is coming back into the courtroom.
Thank you for watching. Who's watching? Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it.
There she is. Good morning.
I'm sure she's not happy to be coming back.
All right, we have the witness back on the stand, and I'll advise the witness, as I do all witnesses who come back on after a break, you're still under oath. Very well. You can continue with your cross-examination.
I'd like to be a little closer.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I have a few more questions for you. And the first two, I'm going to need you to step into the center of the room here for me, okay?
Poor baby, she's already getting up and down.
Let's get a microphone also. And that is, just to remind you, that's actually for the witness.
I don't need it. Okay, you're right-handed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if it's more comfortable, you want to stand here to point? You can hold the mic on the left. This is seat. Is that good for you?
Okay, here we go, y'all.
Point right,
Okay.
hold it here, sorry. Sorry, I'm not used to speaking into it.
Can the jurors see this? Okay.
Oh, thank you for the loves. Who is watching? Oh my gosh, thank you so much. We love you back.
All right, just to refresh our drawing from yesterday, right? We're looking at the easel, the court record. This was your home, correct, your house?
Yes,
And then this is your backyard patio, whatever you wanted to call it.
That's the loudest I can get it because she's not on a mic.
yes,
And then you drew, is it true that you drew a red line here to reflect the first barbed wire fence?
And we do
Correct.
not have a regular
And then you
camera
drew
to
another
show.
one, a little bit further out.
We'll just have to read the captioning, guys. I got it gained up all the way.
correct,
So you have fence 1, fence 2.
correct,
And then you kind of end it by drop off of this area through a wash, correct?
correct.
All right. So, do you remember going back a little bit into the testimony of the first incident, the first law enforcement response? Okay? The
Correct,
shots, the fear, all those things that you talked about. And then Border Patrol and sheriffs came out, is that right?
correct.
Okay. Now, did you have a chance to observe, whether through your back porch, your windows, whatever, did you have a chance to observe any law enforcement, whichever department, search or spread out to search your property looking for something?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, since our fencing is red, I'm going to give you a black marker. And I want you to do you even have any idea how many was out there?
How many border?
How many law enforcement agents were out there?
There were 4. 2 from the sheriff's department, a man and a woman, and then 2 border patrol.
Okay.
Thank you,
Now,
thank
just
you.
to reflect, this double X is here, and the arrow pointing that way was the group or people that you saw, the 2 you saw, in what direction. So, starting, and if you have to go over those marks, it's okay. I want you to draw, not necessarily to scale, because I'm sure this is not to scale, but give us an idea with an arrow, pointing in the direction, kind of, were they spread out?
Yes.
Okay, so I think what it's going to look like, based on your interpretation of it and your observation of it, I want you to draw an arrow reflecting the path of the different agents of what you observed through your home. And which section would that start?
Well, they came here to the front door. I told them that the people that were, the incident happened right over in this Sonny's pasture. And so I went back in the house and
Why is the judge
didn't
leaving?
pay much attention for a little bit. But then I looked out and the 4
you
of them
going?
were spread out. You want me to make marks where they were?
Where are you going, Judge?
Then I'm going to take your mic while you draw.
Okay. And there were 4 of them spread out across here. They had apparently climbed over the ladder there because I didn't see them go around the thing. So
Okay, let me slow down the thing. Let's be clear, because they got to understand you. You did not see them go over the ladder. You didn't see it.
I did not.
Or, I mean, you think they did go over the ladder. I misinterpreted what you said.
Yes, I think they went over the ladder.
Because you didn't see them go all the way down here to get back into this corral area
Correct.
or pasture area.
Correct.
So what I want you to do is, without it being to scale, put them in the direction where you start with an arrow and you point it in a direction to show their path. Okay, so let me have your mind, and I'll let you draw about
This
4
is
lines
good, y'all.
reflecting each individual approximately.
Oh, thank you for getting near a microphone. I think what she's trying to show is that the Border Patrol did not do a thorough sweep, or they got real close to the body and didn't find it. That was been one of my questions. You got 4 agents there at least, and they're walking towards the direction. How far did they go?
Spread out, and they
Why
were
they
all
didn't see
headed
'em?
in the same direction. They walked from this fence line to the next fence line.
Did you see what they did after that?
No, I did not.
But you clearly saw them in this section here,
Yes, ma'am.
between the 2 barbed wire fences,
Yes, ma'am.
and then you quit watching them.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with your property. You walk your property all the time, right?
Correct.
Have you ever seen a pine tree on your property?
No.
Pine trees are not on property. What is the judge doing?
And let the record reflect that she drew 4 arrows starting at
Yeah, I'm going to have to play with the volume.
or closest to the house, the inside of the first barbed wire fence, moving in an eastward direction, spread across what would be she would call her pasture. Okay, I'm going to erase some of this a little bit just to clean up the board for a second, and ask you something else on this board. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I took off what you just drew. I took off the direction that you drew yesterday of the first group that you saw. We still have a D here for the deceased. And I'm just going to circle that a little bit in black while it's written in red. Okay?
Okay.
So
The deceased was on the other
everything
side of the second
is
fence.
still on those easel, okay, that you drew.
Correct.
All right. Now, being familiar, again, point which way is east. Okay,
Yeah.
so an east would be directly from your patio or your back door patio area. It would be an upward motion on this floor, correct?
Correct.
To the top of the board. Okay. And so we've heard from a witness that said that they were, this would be out here in this section of your property where the deceased was located. And you found that yesterday. You marked the D on this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so you're familiar that it would not be in the first section that belongs to your horse, but the second section, right?
Correct.
Past the second wiring. And this witness was apparently near the bottom, okay? If they were facing south, which way
Thank
would
you
they
for
be
watching, y'all. I appreciate
This
it.
way.
facing? Okay, so what
The
I want
person
you to
that's
do
being interviewed
for the
or
purposes of
testifying
right
is the gray-haired
now,
lady
we're
here,
gonna call that
or
person
deceased.
W, okay?
She is the
I want you
wife
to mark
of
W.
the
It could be
defendant,
anywhere
and it's
near
right,
the D,
she's right here.
okay? You
I wish
want
they'd
to
show
put
it
the
better,
top of
but
it.
she's kind of off.
And I want you to just put a small arrow you can't even talk, arrow next to it, showing which way it's facing, south. Okay, so mark it as 0. And then draw an arrow anywhere on that 0, which way it's facing. So it's facing south. Can you draw that for us?
Now, she's kind of diagramming and drawing out their
I let it dry.
property,
apparently.
giving a visual of where everything was.
Okay, get a little arrow when they're showing it's going south. Okay. The next thing was heard that is the house is to the right. Would that be a true statement based on that?
If this person is standing here walking that way, the house is on the right. Correct.
So that is true. That, and I think I heard you, but I was given some more pins. That they're facing south. And let me get an S on there. Let me borrow yours. I think it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next comment, thank you. You just marked north on the other side. The next comment was the house was on the right. And you say that would be true, correct?
Correct.
Now it's the house is on the right. To the left. And you say that would be true, correct?
Correct.
Somewhere to the left. Now it's the house is on the right. To the left. And you say that would be true, correct?
Correct.
Somewhere to the left. Okay.
I don't know what the heck just happened, y'all.
After that.
Sorry.
Was they ran to the wash.
Sorry.
Point the direction by the S with an arrow next to it towards the wash. Next to, and yeah, just come on, you can go right through the S.
Your Honor, and I'm going to object, this misstates the testimony of the witness.
Overall, the jury, this is just for purposes of foundation, but if the questions misstate what a witness testified to, your recollection, your notes of what was testified to control. So the objection's overruled. It's always the jury's decision about what the evidence was and is, and your recollection will control your deliberations.
Okay, so basically, that with that description I gave you, you weren't in here when this was stated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you don't know anything about what I'm telling you, correct?
Correct.
All right, other than my questions, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so basically, this person, this witness, would have ran towards the direction of the shooter according to the diagram you just created, correct?
Correct.
And the shooter would not be near the house, correct?
Correct.
And from everything you know after the fact on who did the shooting, where casings were found, everything was supposedly done by your house down here, correct?
Correct.
So this would not be a true statement, would it?
What would not be a
The
true?
shooter would not be up here, but would have been down there if it was.
Objection calls for speculation.
Correct. Correct.
Oh, good girl. Got the answer in. Judge, get back on the bench. I think he came around to see.
The objection, I was off, so I could see the board, but the objection's overruled. The witness is being questioned based upon her familiarity with the house, location of the house, and location of all the things that are being drawn, not to scale, on the board. So I think she can it's appropriate that she answer the question due to her special familiarity with all of the objects that were involved in this alleged incident and with the objects on the board. So the objection is overruled.
Would you put in red and a big A where you learned that Alan came outside the house? Where was he? Just put an A there on where your the demonstrative drawing that we're making. Do it a little darker. Okay.
I think this helps in a way to give the jury a visual. I know at this point they have not been out to the ranch because this was this morning. Why it wasn't on live, I do not know. This is a replay.
This dude.
That's why we got all 4 cameras. The live feed was not there.
You say you passed.
Counsel, did you pass the witness? Did I hear you correctly?
Did Judge?
Redirect examination, using the court's authority under Rule 611 of the Arizona Rules of Evidence. Redirect is limited to 20 minutes. You have 20 minutes.
Woo!
Thank you, Your Honor.
And
Ms.
she can
Kelly, I wanna
only
start first
only
with
talk about
the,
what's already been asked. She can't bring anything new
Drone
up.
footage that's been admitted as State's Exhibit 36. Could I have the board, please?
I wonder where she's going with this.
Mrs. Kelly, we're going to look at some drone footage this is currently the top of your house. We're going to be looking at your backyard. And I'm going to advance it just a little bit so I can confirm where it is that you say.
And unfortunately, since we don't have live feed,
Alan
we
was
won't be able to
standing.
see the drone footage.
And
Because it's
do
up
you
on a
see the
wall
area where
TV.
Alan was standing on the drone footage
TV on the
now?
wall.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I mean, I don't think she has personal knowledge she's learned afterwards. If that's what they're asking, what she learned afterwards, like I did, that's fine.
The objection is sustained on lack of foundation. You can ask additional questions.
Your Honor, she just drew it on the map a minute ago based on counsel's request.
What I just told you was that with additional questioning, you are permitted to try to establish foundation.
Okay. Mrs. Kelly, did your husband tell you where he was standing?
Yes, later, not that day.
Is that what you just drew for the defense on the diagram,
The A is where he was standing.
according to him?
Yes.
Could you please draw that same A on State's Exhibit 36, which has been admitted?
With this pen?
Yes, please, and if you just touch the upper left corner, it'll give you a color. Is that the area? I see an arrow, that's good enough. Is that the
Yes,
area where he was
that's it.
standing?
That's where he was standing.
Okay. And then I want to make sure I understand, because the diagram I'm seeing doesn't match the map that we have, the aerial view of the, so I want to go to that, but first I want to do it with the drone footage. So I'm going to play the drone footage, and I'd like you to tell me, in this drone footage, I see that first fence line there.
Correct.
Where are the men standing with relationship to the pergola?
The two I saw would have been more to the left.
More to the left than this diagram.
Yes.
How much further to the left?
Oh, I don't know because of the fact that with the fence, you see the post and the wires, and if you go on to the left more, there are 3 rusty metal posts close together. And the 2 men I saw were just on that side of those posts.
Okay, Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 114. I'm going to zoom this in. I don't know what's going on with the screen, but it's not changing with my presenter view. if we could just stop the screen for a minute, I'm going to try to restart it. Mrs. Kelly, I'm showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 114. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to try to zoom in a little more on this if we see if we can. Can you show us on this map where you believe you saw the individuals?
Of course, there's going to be a little discrepancies. It's hard for people sometimes to draw a perfectly
You believe it was
topographical map.
East of the pergola, or I mean, I'm sorry, north of the pergola, is that right?
I just find that kind of funny.
Is that where the arrow is? Just to the east of the pergola?
Where the fence lines are.
Okay, but it looks like it's just to the east of the pergola, is that fair?
Yes.
And then, the map is a little bit confusing for me because the victim's body is not where it's positioned on this. So let me take a look at, let me pull up that map for you. And before we move on from this, I see the wash in this map. Do you see the wash in this map?
Yes, ma'am.
Does the wash go directly behind your house, or is it off to the side, as it is in the aerial map in Exhibit 114?
The wash is on our property, but it's not right at the house, no. I can't see it from the house. You have to walk down a hill.
So the way it's depicted here on the diagram is that it's directly behind your house.
No, this is the wash down here, right?
Right, so this isn't accurate, correct? It's actually over this way, the wash?
The wash runs from my house, it runs this way.
Okay, thank you, that clarifies it. And it's actually quite a ways from your house, is that right?
Correct.
And so, all right. So I want to go through a few things with you. You actually told Ron Martinelli that the young man you talked to that night was very polite with you, correct?
Which young man?
The first one who escorted you out to the patrol car. Is that
Yeah.
right?
He was polite, yes.
And when the officers came to your house, that was a female sergeant named Yuvia Garcia, correct?
I do not know their names.
You don't recall their names.
No.
And Yuvia Garcia actually told you that they were obtaining a search warrant and that you needed to leave the house because there was going to be a search warrant and that they needed to have the house be empty in the meantime. Is that right?
No, I don't remember her telling me they were getting a search warrant.
Okay. And then after that, they told you to grab a coat because it's cold outside and your purse. Is that right?
Correct.
And then they took you outside and they let you sit in the patrol car because it was cold outside and they turned the heater on for you, correct?
Objection, leading.
Sustain.
Did the officers turn the heater on in the patrol car and let you sit in the patrol car because it was cold?
Yes, they turned the heat on in the patrol car.
The other option would have been for you to stand outside in the cold. Is that right?
I suppose so.
Now, last time you told me that you overheard the conversation between your husband and Jeremy Morcell when they were standing at the back door, correct?
Correct.
But you actually told Ron Martinelli on March 9th of 2023 that you did not overhear that conversation, correct?
I don't know if I told him that, but if it's in your thing, then I told him that.
So you'd agree that you told Ron Martinelli that you did not overhear the Morcell conversation between your husband and Morcell?
I don't remember him asking me that, and if he did, I don't know whether he was talking about when I called Morcell or when Alan called him later. I didn't hear the second conversation with him.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 125, page 17. Could you please just read those 4 lines yourself, please?
Then I told him incorrectly.
But you told him you
I did tell him no, but that is not correct.
But just so I'm clear, because you referenced 2 phone conversations with Morcell, it was actually that first phone conversation between your husband and Jeremy Morcell that you told him you did not overhear, correct?
I don't know which one he's talking about, but if it was the first one, I did tell him, according to that, I said no, I did not hear. But I probably misunderstood his question.
Once again, I think they're beating a dead horse with this poor sweet
But his
soul.
question to you was, you mentioned that Alan had a conversation after the shots were fired. He had a conversation with Jeremy. Were you able to overhear that conversation? And you replied no, correct?
I did reply no, correct.
Ooh, it's getting hot in here. This equipment gets very hot
Now,
in
you
here.
talk about how Detective Ainza you talked with the defense about how Detective Ainza asked you if you had anything to hide when
Okay, well, then get it together.
you asked him if you had to answer questions. Is that right?
He didn't ask me that. He said I didn't have to answer, but do I have something to hide or something he needs to know? I don't remember the exact words that he used.
And Your Honor, the state's actually requesting to play a video clip because we believe that
I think
the
someone's
total
breathing on a
is
microphone.
very important, so I'd ask to play a video clip of Detective Ainza's interview related to this.
Your Honor, I'll be objecting. Should we go on the headset, or do you want me to do this in open court?
Open court.
Thank you, Judge. For many reasons. Number one, this area has been asked and answered, and for her to go back to it is exceeding the scope of her purpose of this testimony at this time. For rebuttal, I did not discuss the situation whatsoever. Two, for the same reasons yesterday, this is hearsay, and she hasn't laid any predicate at all for the purpose of just playing this video or recording, and it's the best evidence rule that applies here.
Well, first question, is this in evidence as an exhibit?
It's not, Your Honor, but this witness is on the video, I've been impeaching her with the transcript that's also not in evidence. This is appropriate impeachment because it's a video of this interview that Mrs. Kelly participated in.
What is it? It's 10 seconds or 12 seconds?
Um,
What portion are you intending to play?
The first clip, Your Honor, which is 2:05. Through 5:57.
What part is alleged to be hearsay?
The whole video is hearsay. There's been no proper predicate for impeachment laid in this case. And the topic of this was already questioned by the ADA, and so this has been asked and answered.
Didn't we go over this in detail yesterday and today?
Yes,
Your
you
Honor,
did.
The defense put a different spin on this during their cross-examination. I would like the jury to know the demeanor of Mrs. Kelly during this section, and I think the only way the jury can get the demeanor is from playing the video.
Where do you intend to stop? I have what you gave my judicial assistant with the transcript and the length of time and the timing, so what section is it that you're proposing to play? I'm a little
Her
confused.
I
demeanor.
was proposing to play the first clip, which is
My
marked
gosh,
on
her
the
demeanor?
left, 2:05.
Really? That's what you want to show?
What I provided to the court, and it ends on page 17 at 5:57. This also references the other issue we discussed yesterday with respect to whether she knew about the dead body. The defense went through that extensively yesterday.
All right, so it ends on page what?
17 at line 11.
She's trying to get stuff into evidence that's not in evidence yet. She wants to impeach her with documentation and video that's not in evidence yet.
Well, I'm a little concerned that the exhibit is not in evidence. Are you avowing to the court that you'll be able to lay a foundation for the admission of the exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the exhibit's overruled, and
My
Yeah,
answer?
you'll-
No. No.
No. Okay, they can impeach a witness
For the
with
record, Your Honor.
transcripts.
For the record,
Meaning-
Your Honor, this is State's Exhibit 131, which is the first clip
Meaning,
on the transcript that
they
we just
they
discussed.
did a deposition, and what they're saying on the witness stand is not matching the deposition. They can bring the deposition in, have the witness look at the deposition and say, yes, that's what I said there, but no, or whatever. But that deposition is not evidence straight in and of itself. She now wants to bring a video in so she can show the personality and the demeanor. Well, this poor woman, we are human, y'all. And when we're scared and tired at 2:00 in the morning or whatever, I mean, no. I don't agree, but he may let it in.
I don't know why we're having trouble with the screen today, Judge.
he's moving his hand.
No, I'm just saying, you talked to him about overall the things, and I wasn't outside, I don't know. Anyway, please,
No, it's like I said, you're at the house, you're basically a witness. Let's talk about the second time that we were out there.
you'll have to answer all these questions.
Well, you don't have to, because, is there something that I need to know?
No, I'm just saying, you talked to him about overall the things, and I wasn't outside, I don't know. Anyway, please,
No, it's like I said, you're at the house, you're basically a witness right now, okay, at the house. I just want to know what happened. I just want to know what happened the second time.
the second time they came? Let's see, they came, I don't know, they went, Alan was outside, and they came, and they were talking with him out there, and I was inside, and then they stayed out there a long time, and then a lady and the young man that was with me before you, came in and told me that I needed to get a coat and I needed to put it on, and they were going to take me out and put me in the vehicle. And I said, do I need anything else? She said, bring your purse, maybe. And she said that they were getting a search warrant to search the house. I said, do you have it yet? She said, no. And she said they were going out to the car with me, and they put me in the car because it was cold, so I wouldn't get cold.
And regarding the search warrant, that's what I'm working on right now. There is gonna be a search warrant for your house. And we'll explain to that later once I serve you with the search warrant, okay? Did your husband
I'm really
ever
struggling to
mention
hear. Thank
you
God
when
for
he discovered
captioning.
The second time he came back to the house?
No, he went out to feed the horse and dogs. He came in and I asked him what time he wanted to have, no. He was inside with me, I don't know, we were doing stuff on the computer. And then I asked him what time he wanted to have dinner. He said, oh, about 6 o'clock. He said, I gotta go out and feed the horse and the dog.
Okay.
And so he went out, and then he didn't come back, and then y'all showed up.
Okay. And did you know what happened after that? We showed up the second time, your husband?
I just assumed the worst because everybody had been there, and there was all this was going on,
Okay.
and I just thought, well, I'm not going to ask questions, I'm not going to say anything, I'm just still tell me and say what I need to know.
But she's not required to say anything or ask questions.
They were coming down here to ask me questions. I asked where was my husband, and they said he was down here too. I don't know.
Has anyone tell you what was discovered at your property? No? As of right now, no one has told.
Okay. I'm going to pause here. Excuse me, I didn't bring anything to drink. Her husband told her what happened on the property. But none of the Border Patrol or sheriff's officers have come to her and said, we have, what's the word I'm looking for? We have declared a deceased person on your property. That's not what I'm looking for, but, they did not themselves talk to her and tell her that they have basically declared this guy deceased. Only her husband. So when she's asking and answering this question, when she's asked this question, he goes, has anybody, she's assuming anybody in the legal force, Border Patrol or Sheriff Office. She's not including her husband in this. This is what she clarified yesterday.
Only that, yes. Who was it? The lady.
Then a lady told her later.
Police officers
Yeah,
like
that
that?
was there.
And Sergeant
She
Garcia?
said something about they found a dead body. So that's, I knew that.
And he's got a gunshot.
And what?
He's got a gunshot wound.
You knew
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
that you wouldn't
What
see
is your intention with this video?
I mean, you see them by your house.
I'm sorry, she's an old lady. She's
Mrs.
got,
Kelly, that's a video of you with Detective Raines, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's your interaction with Detective Raines, is that correct?
Yes.
And based on that video, you'd agree with me that Detective Garcia actually told you,
Objection, sustained.
did Detective Garcia tell you that they were going to serve a search warrant on your house?
Apparently, yes.
And you did not tell Detective Ianza, did you tell Detective Ianza that your husband came in and told you that they'd found a dead body?
No.
And in fact, you tried to deliberately mislead him about that, didn't you?
Objection, sustained. Anyway, I've allotted you 20 minutes. You're past the 20 minutes. It's 25. Any questions for this witness from the jurors? We do.
I knew that was coming. We have to do this, y'all, because they have the most horrible static and rain sound, noise cancellation. So let's just calm the mood. That poor lady spent 80% of the day on the stand yesterday. She started this morning. Gotta love that woman. I understand she's trying to be honest and do the right thing. At the same time, she's not wanting to throw out or say anything that can inadvertently harm her husband. Not today. I'm talking about on the day of the event. And she's a type of woman asked and answered. If you didn't ask, did your husband tell you that there were people on your property or a dead person on your property? She's not going to volunteer it. She reminds me a lot of my grandmother. She's not going to volunteer information, but if you ask, she will tell you, and she will tell you the truth and tell you like it is. So if I'm on the jury, I'm not going to, this holds no weight. In fact, it feels like they're badgering her, honestly. And I think that the prosecution just wasted a lot of time in their redirect. I think that they thought they were doing the right thing by putting her on the stand. It was a crapshoot for them. In fact, her husband had to sign a documentation releasing her so she could be on the stand. I think this was also a gamble that the defense took, that they could explain or justify pretty much anything that was asked. And honestly, I feel like they have. I came into this on an even keel, just like a juror would. I didn't know any details. I just know that a rancher shot somebody on his land. That's all. Everything I've learned about this case, I've learned through watching the trial. And I can tell y'all, I would not convict at this point. Now, there's still a lot more trial to go. I'm not saying I'm stuck on that, but I'm saying is if it went to trial today, went to verdict today, that... No. I didn't do that. No. I don't know why it's doing that. I would say not guilty. I need to create a button, not guilty or guilty. Well, obviously these questions are really being debated for them to take this much time. Did they mute? I'm full blast. So I guess in their version of the, they can cut this feed out, but when there's a live camera in the room, they do a static noise. I still think this is nicer, don't you? So as long as they have the headphones on, y'all, they are not going to be, you won't hear anything. Because I do not want, they don't want the gallery or the witnesses hearing anything. Although every once in a while we're getting a little caption thing coming on. Oh, I forgot. I forgot I can do that because we're not live. Well, let me see. Well, this was a long consult.
Number one. Question number two.
All right, let's go back. Okay. I forgot, I'm not live. I'm used to being live. That's good practice for me. Thanks for sticking in there.
All right, judges are allowed to ask some questions, and I pose the questions, and then they're allowed to ask additional questions if they have follow-up, and then the lawyers are allowed to follow up to these questions, just so you know what's coming, all right? Okay. Well, the first question is actually for me. So, question for Judge Fink. When Wanda was detained the night of January 30th, 2023, she states she was never read her Miranda rights. Are her answers to the detective's interview admissible in court? Also, would it be an improper seizure to take a cell phone without a warrant or is it included in the search warrant? My answer to that question to you, again, these are legal issues, and for purposes of this trial, if you heard this or any other evidence during this trial, you can assume that I have ruled that the evidence is legally admissible for you to consider. So that's my answer to question number one. Question number two is for the witness. For clarification, Mrs. Kelly, can she describe the size of the bundles or bags, and I think this is really referring to the backpacks, or what the individuals you saw were carrying, right? Can she describe the size of the bundles, bags, the two people who were walking in her property were carrying? Were they small enough, about the size of school children, weighing approximately 5 pounds, were large, wrapped with burlap, painted black, carrying approximately 70 pounds?
Ooh, good question. Why am I leaning
Well,
into
the
my
backpacks I had were very large and stuck out from their backs, maybe a foot or so. And the length of the backpacks, if I say, I'd say it was from the man's neck down to below his waist. And then it was wide. I couldn't, of course, say that much how wide it was, but it was long and it was very pushed out.
And I think we all know the answer, but just coming from you, but what was the type of material?
I don't know what the material was, but the color was dark brown.
Thank you. All right.
dark brown or
Now,
yellow?
I'm going to ask you a couple questions. The first question is just a yes or no answer, and then we'll see where we go. Okay?
Okay?
It was January 30th, 2023, the first time, is January, really small writing here. Make it small light. All right, let me make sure I get this right. Is January 30th, 2023, the first and only time that you heard or were aware of gunshots fired on the ranch by anyone other than Alan? And again, just a yes or no answer to start with. Is January 30th, 2023 the first and only time you're aware that gunshots were fired on the ranch by anyone other than Alan?
I think on that one. I suppose personally, the only time I heard the gunfire was this time. Because
So your answer is of your personal awareness.
of my personal awareness, this was the first time.
All right, thank you. Now, again, the first part of the question I'm going to ask and calling just for a yes or no answer. And you'll be fine with the one, so you get it, right? How many other times have you seen, or let me ask it this way. Have there been other times when you have seen trespassers on your ranch?
Yes.
All right, now, with respect to the first question, you very properly indicated of your personal knowledge, and that's why we're asking this in a yes or no manner. Of those times, how many times are you aware of trespassers coming on your ranch based upon your personal knowledge? Doesn't have to be exact, but a range, or if it's more than one.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Sure. All right, from your personal knowledge, yes or no, have there been other times when you've seen trespassers on your ranch?
Yes, I have seen other times.
All right, and during what approximate time frame?
Maybe two or 3 years ago, I saw one.
Okay. And were there any special circumstances, again, this is by your personal knowledge, that circumstance, were there any special circumstances, anything in particular happened on that occasion where you saw one?
Do we have a lawyer in the jury box?
Okay, now, I'm sorry. Can you, to my personal knowledge, meaning did I see what happened to these people? Or do I know
Let me
what
ask it this
happened to
way.
these people?
Let me ask it this way. Have there been other times, regardless of personal knowledge or not, have there been other times when there have been trespassers on the ranch?
Yes.
And how do you know that? So let me ask you this. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be very careful here. And approximately how many times do you believe there have been trespassers crossing your property on the ranch?
Maybe 6 or 7.
And how do you know that?
Because either Border Patrol called and told us, or Alan called Border Patrol.
All right, very well. Follow-up questions from the lawyer's counsel. We'll start with the state.
This ought to be good.
I'll hand these questions to the clerk.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Woo! Oh my
Anything for your
God.
defense?
In reference to how many times you're aware of trespassers, you testified yesterday to finding camps, clothing, items. Were they on your property?
Yes, they were on my property.
So you had personal knowledge of them being there, just didn't see the bodies in those scenarios.
Correct.
And would you find that environment of clothing, items, water bottles, all the things you testified to on more than one occasion?
I believe twice.
You testified yesterday that that's what stopped you from taking walks.
Yeah, well, am I allowed to explain something?
I'm asking a question. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'm gonna, I believe the witness is asking this question because of an instruction about a court's instruction.
Well, you all appear to know something more than I do. What's your hesitation? I appreciate what you're doing, and asking whether or not it's proper for you to answer. I appreciate that very much. Just tell me what the nature of your concern is, because I'm kind of in the dark.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
All right. Well, you said, am I allowed to answer this? You had some concerns about that, and I appreciate you asking that question. Why do you hesitate to answer that? What's your concern?
Well, I can't really answer it in yes or no.
All right, she can answer the question. You're allowed to answer the question. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. When I would go on my walks, and I would walk with my dogs down in the wash toward the Forest Service line, you would find camps where they had camped. There were no bodies there still, but they left blankets and stuff that I told you yesterday. And then on other times, there would be we found camp by by the barn, and what was there were black water bottles and carpet slippers. Now poor people in the wash that left the trash, they were just, I suppose they were here to try to find work and a good life. But the guys with the carpet slippers and the black water bottles, That's the cartel, according to the Border
Objection,
Patrol.
hearsay.
All right. Any other questions from the defense?
Thank you. In reference to the other question, I just wanted to bring clarity. You were very careful to say personal knowledge, okay? And so my question is, you don't go outside and walk anymore for quite some years now, right?
I have not walked since January 2023.
Because of the environment, correct?
Correct.
You have awareness of incidents, and I'm going to keep it real vague here to be careful with the court, okay?
Correct.
And I just want to bring clarity to it. You just don't have personal knowledge by walking and seeing these events, but you are aware of dangerous events that's taken place on your property.
Objection, Your Honor.
Calls for a yes or no answer. She can answer.
Yes.
Okay, and just another yes or no, is that in reference with your husband?
Same objection, Your Honor.
I don't know.
Is the personal knowledge would be, of knowledge of these events would come from your
All right,
husband?
sustain. Can't answer the question.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other follow-up questions to your questions, members of the jury? So let me talk to you why we're kind of doing a little dance here a little bit. Again, we've described hearsay. General rule, hearsay is inadmissible. There are many exceptions. The caution with asking the questions, personal knowledge and so forth has to do with evidentiary rules concerning hearsay, which are up to the court, myself, to decide. The potentiality was if we'd allowed the witness to answer more through no fault of her own, that may have called for inadmissible hearsay in an evidentiary. So I'm just trying to explain, if you're asked, one of your jurors asked a question and you're a little frustrated that we kind of danced around and really didn't get to it, it wasn't that we didn't want you to know the answer, but the rules of evidence have to be employed here. That's my responsibility. And our concern was that the answers could call for inadmissible hearsay. So maybe not a great satisfying answer, but it's an explanation of why we were doing what we were doing. Legal issues that I have to be concerned with. All right. You may step down, and you are excused.
Your Honor, since this is my client's wife, if she's excused, can she now remain in the courtroom?
Any objection?
Your Honor, the state may wish to recall her in rebuttal after her husband testifies. She's the only one of two eyewitnesses to this incident, and so the state would request that she not come into the courtroom because we may need to recall her.
Objection's overruled. She can remain in the courtroom if she wishes. You can call your next witness.
He's going to call Miss Brophy.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. I do.
Good morning, over here. This way. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court? State your name.
My name is Cassandra Brophy,
Can you spell your last name for the record?
Brophy.
Miss Brophy, where do you work?
I'm a forensic scientist in the Arizona Department of Public Safety Southern Regional Crime Lab, which is in Tucson, Arizona.
Excuse me one moment. All the members are, again, you're on a different amplification system than I am. I have my own little speaker up here. Can you hear this witness all right? Everybody? Thank you. I apologize. Go ahead.
Ms. Brophy, how long have you been with, can I just shorten it up and say DPS?
Yes.
How long have you been with DPS?
I've been with DPS for 11 years, specifically in the DNA serology unit for 8 years.
And before that?
In the department, I was in the controlled substance unit for the first 3 years.
Is that your entire career with DPS?
Yes, it is.
And when you say DNA and serology, can you explain to the jury the difference between the two of those?
Our lab utilizes a team approach. We have serologists who handle the evidence first, and we get the physical items of evidence. Our job is to look for the best source of potential DNA. That could be screening it for a body fluid, such as blood, semen, or saliva, or looking to where somebody may have handled an item and taking collections from that. Once I find the best potential source of DNA, I take collections and I get it ready for the DNA analyst, and they perform the analysis to determine a profile.
And then, so some other person does the analysis and does the reporting?
Correct. They take ownership of all of my notes, so my notes will be reflected on their report.
So you're the first stop for any sampling that comes into DPS for this kind of testing?
Correct.
And obviously, you don't work for Santa Cruz County?
No, I do not.
Are you often called upon in your experience with DPS by sister jurisdictions or smaller jurisdictions to assist on investigations?
Yes.
We do perform analysis for agencies in southern Arizona that don't have their own crime lab, and we are called to testify on our results.
So the answer is yes.
So this is nothing abnormal or uncommon?
No,
Correct.
it is not.
Were you provided, were you asked to do any work in this investigation?
Yes.
And,
Duh, that's why I'm here.
You have a report, right?
I don't issue a report. My results would be on the DNA analyst's report.
And that'd be who?
Heather Rivera Reyes.
And if I have copies of reports with your notes in it, so if you need to refresh your recollection, let me know, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
Do you remember
how
the
nice.
case number or anything related to this case that you were called upon to assist?
We have our department record number. No matter what the agency case number is, we assign it our own number so we can keep track in our system. And I remember my department record number, but I would also like to refresh with Heather's report if I could.
You're going to move to approach the witness.
Yes.
I'm still waiting for a ta-da! He did it moment. And we've not had that.
For the record, I'm showing you Government Exhibit 11, 11.1, and 11.2.
Then appears to be the report that Ms. Rivera Reyes issued, including my serology results.
And what's 11.1?
11.1 appears to be the DNA information.
And 11.2.
Eleven point two appears to be the DNA information specific to the known standards.
Okay, we'll go into that in a sec, but let me ask, or with Ms. Reyes, let me ask you, what was the case that you're refreshing your recollection with report Government Exhibit 11? What was the case that you were asked to assist on?
The DPSDR number is 2023 702 235.
Is there any name on there, or is it just by number?
The name on the report is George Kelly, and I also have the agency information if you would like me to read that.
No, you're fine. George Kelly is the name on the report?
Yes.
Is that like the subject line, I'm sorry, subject sounds like an email, the subject of the investigation?
Yes.
Thank you for watching. If you're watching, please leave a comment
What items-
and subscribe.
If you
I
refresh your
greatly
recollection, what
appreciate
items
it.
Did you intake?
Right now, we have a scientific
assisting in
analyst
this?
for GPS on.
I did different
DNA
types of
specifically.
testing. The first of which, can I go into what I did?
Well, let me ask you first, what did you intake? Well, what came in?
We had several items come into the laboratory. When something first comes into the lab, it comes to our property and evidence department, and they fill out paperwork in reference to what that item is and what tests they're requesting on it. There was a number of items that were related to the defendant's clothing. There were items that were related to the decedent's clothing, as well as a rifle and some spent shell casings. In addition to that, I also had known standards. What that means is it's a known DNA sample that's taken from an individual. When we're talking about buccal swabs, it's a swab taken from the interior cheek, or a DNA patch might be blood from an individual on a paper.
Okay, is there, to refresh your recollection, is there a list of items by item number in the report?
Yes, it is listed on our paperwork that I was just referring to, the request sheet that the agency initially fills out.
And what's on, can you list them out for me? We'll go through them one at a time, but can you just list them out for me?
There was a number of items that we didn't do any testing on. Did you want me to list those as well, or just what we performed analysis with?
I'd like to have them both, but let's break them down. Let's segregate them out. So which ones you did testing on?
So item 17.1JA was a pair of boots from Mr. Kelly. 17.5JA was a pair of work gloves, also from Mr. Kelly. 17.7JA was a pair of jeans. The rifle that was submitted was item 21JA.
So they're just going to give the DNA that his DNA was on the rifle, thus it's his rifle.
The rifle
Rifle's not in
that
question.
had its own number as 21.1JA. There was a spent shell casing, 22JA. A second spent shell casing, 23JA. 24JA and 25JA were also spent shell casings. The standard, the buccal swab for Mr. Kelly was item 35JA.
Y'all, I'm
There
gonna,
was a DNA
if she's
patch
talking slow enough,
from
we're
the
gonna speed this up a little.
decedent as 38JA1. One jacket from the decedent, 43.1JA. And the other items were ones that I had created an item number for, which I collected in the laboratory.
Well, don't leave me guessing what item number are those.
I took some samples from the jacket. One swab from the left shoulder was 43.1JA.1, and a swab from the right sleeve of the jacket was 43.1JA.2.
And those are items, I'm going to ask a question real quick.
I wonder if you found
DNA
DNA on the
Those
jacket
items
of the
that were
victim and the
testified
dog
in your
that
lab.
was nosing and,
They're broken up into a few
trying to wake up the body.
I did do testing on some of the items, the boots, gloves, jeans, as well as the jacket. The other items didn't qualify for DNA testing. They didn't qualify according to our touch protocol. I did know they were going to move on for further testing with latent prints for firearms, so I took collections. I preserved any DNA that was on there. I did take collections that are stored in our frozen storage, but no testing was performed on those.
And you mentioned a term, I think it was relating to 38JA1, DNA patch from victim. What's a DNA patch?
If a sample isn't taken from the interior cheek, another option that the medical examiners primarily give us is they'll remove blood from an individual and put that on a card and submit that as a known standard for us to use.
This is going to be boring and long.
We're going to pull those out here in a second for you. So when you do an intake, when you receive the items into DPS lab, how do they come into the lab?
They come initially into our property and evidence unit. The agency packages them, they record the item number, their own agency number. Once they come into our department, we're assigning that department record number. and they're filling out the paperwork. I get the paperwork first, and I'm determining what items qualify for testing. So I'm only going to request the items I'll be performing testing on.
Your permission to approach the witness with 2 exhibits?
Yes.
Show you exhibits 103 to 110.
This is going to be slow going.
Okay, I want you, is there any label on it, any seal on that?
Yes, when we're referring to the seal, it's the tape seal that goes from the package. There's initials going from the package to the tape, and my initials are also on this package.
You mind, your initials are on that package?
On exhibit 103 to 106.
Okay, and just so we all know, I mean, why we put initials and stuff on sealed documents or sealed envelopes like that?
The seal to start, it's a requirement of our laboratory to have that specific type of seal with markings that go from the tape to the package. For us, we want it there primarily because it's in our protocol, but secondly, we want to ensure that we know who put that seal on, and if anybody cut it, they're required to add their own seal with their initials and markings. Anybody who adds a seal should also be on our chain of custody, meaning they were allowed.
Okay, y'all. Interesting. Let's try this again. Hopefully I can get right where we were. Sorry about that, y'all. Sometimes there are glitches in the... Oh, no, that's not what I want. Oh, my gosh, y'all. It is so hot.
For us,
There we
we
go.
want it there primarily because it's in our protocol, but secondly, we want to ensure that we know who put that seal on, and if anybody cut it, they're required to add their own seal with their initials and markings. Anybody who adds a seal should also be on our chain of custody, meaning they were allowed to have that evidence at that time, and they will seal it in according to our protocol when they're done with it.
And looking at Government Exhibit 103 to 106, does that look like to be your seal?
My seal appears to be cut, but my original seal was on there.
Okay, can you open that up for me? And when you're done with, as you're opening that up, can you do 2 things at once?
Do you have scissors?
Oh, I took them. As you're cutting that open, when you're done doing what DPS does at DPS, you put them in an envelope and you reseal the items, right?
If a seal was already there, I'll add a seal. My external packaging has to have a seal no matter what. My internal packaging, I may or may not seal it depending on what it is.
But you seal it and give it back to the investigating agency.
I do.
Okay. Can you look inside? Don't show the jury, but can you just identify what's inside there?
Yes.
What's inside?
Inside are coin envelopes that also have my markings on them, as well as our agency case number and the item number.
What's the item numbers on? Are they're both an exhibit number and an item number?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, what's exhibit 103? What item number is that?
Item 22JA.
And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing for the 104, 105, and 106.
104 is item 23JA. Exhibit 105 is item 24JA. And exhibit 106 is item 25JA.
You're going to move to admit exhibits 103 to 106 into evidence.
May I just look at the evidence real quick, Judge?
That's only fair.
Are they still in a coin envelope, Ms. Brophy?
Yes.
Can you cut one of those open for counsel?
She has every right to look at all the evidence before it's presented, just in case she doesn't like something.
I guess you don't have to cut him open.
I keep forgetting this is not live, and I keep
103, Exhibit 103.
They're admitting
Again, show the
everything.
jury.
It's a spent shell casing.
And so we don't have to go through this, all of them is 104, 105, and 106, the same, not the same spent shell casing, but similar spent shell casings?
They all had the same description as well as coloring and a gold head stamp.
What kind of stamp?
A gold portion on the end of the shell casing. A gold portion on the end of the shell casing.
Ms. Brophy, can you put all those back in?
Yes, those are his bullets. That's his gun. He's never denied it. I know they got to do this. But this is the part of
Morning
this.
break, so we can get all this set up during the break. Sound good? All right, we'll take a
Good, okay. This is so dry and boring, y'all. I get it.
seated. The record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel on both sides, and the defendant.
Okay, she's not
Whenever
gonna
you're ready,
take
Mr.
too long,
Denny,
y'all.
you may continue with your direct examination.
We're almost
Witness.
done for the morning session.
Good morning, Ms. Brophy.
They have not posted the afternoon.
And just so we understand, we're talking about the intake of items into the DPS lab, right?
Yes, specifically in the DNA unit.
Right. I'm going to ask for permission from the court for Detective Ienza to glove up and bring over item, it's going to be Government Exhibit 83.
Granted.
And you're in these, yes, this is right there. 83's boots, yeah. Just for the record, I think I made a mistake. Exhibit 82 is actually literally a box which contains everything. 83 is referring to the boots. Detective, can you open that for me? And Ms. Brophy, can you step down? Oh, hold on, Detective Ienza. What's labeled? What's the seal on that? What's the seal? Whose seal is on that? On that package?
Objection, this is not a witness in the case.
Sustained.
Okay. Go ahead and open it up, Detective.
Well, for clarity, we anticipate he will be a witness, but he is not the witness at this time.
That's fine.
Not a big deal.
And Ms. Brophy, can you take a peek inside there when he opens that? Ms. Brophy, can you look inside there and can you recognize the item?
Yes, I do.
Do you know what item number that is? Is it,
17.1 JA.
okay. And that's Government
the
Exhibit
weapon?
83. Move to admit Government Exhibit 83 into evidence.
Can't see
What
it.
is it?
Oh, what, Ms. Brophy, what is it?
It's a pair of boots
A pair
A
of boots.
pair of
Your Honor.
boots, okay.
Do you know from whom?
Can't see it.
from Mr. Kelly.
Any objection from the defense?
No, sir.
83 is admitted.
Detective, can you pull those out for us? You can just put them right on the table.
Okay. Those look like, almost like police, military
And Ms. Brophy, those are the boots that you received at DPS lab for analysis?
Yes, they are.
It reminds me, I gotta find my fire boots.
I'm gonna have you put it back in the bag.
Well, that's quick.
And those boots belong to whom again?
Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Those are nice boots.
You can seal it up later, Detective. Yeah, later. I'm gonna have you bring out Exhibit 87, Detective.
They're showing all his clothing and everything she sampled. If they don't have a substantial blood spatter or DNA splatter on this clothes, what are we doing here?
They do.
What's inside that bag?
It's a pair of leather work gloves.
Do you remember the item number that you checked that in at DPS?
Should be item 17.5JA.
You're gonna move to admit Exhibit 87?
I really like his attorney. She looks at everything. She doesn't let anything get under her nose without her staring at it.
No, sir.
Detective Enzi, can you pull it out?
Love her.
Exhibit 87 is,
No, sir.
Detective Enzi, can you pull it out?
Exhibit 87 is admitted.
No, sir.
Detective Enzi?
Action from the defense.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Detective Enzi, can you pull it out?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Detective Enzi, can you pull it in the public? Detective, can you hold those up for the jury to see? And those belong to whom again, Ms. Brophy?
Mr. Kelly.
Okay, you can put those back in the bag, Detective. Can you bring out Exhibit 89? Ms. Brophy, can you take a peek inside there? Wait for Kathy to come. What's inside there, Ms. Brophy? Sure, you have gloves on.
It's a pair of jeans.
You would not item number who those the jury?
I'm just skipping quickly through this. We can't see it very much.
Just got blood. Is the box labeled 112? That's correct. And then what number then, just the record? Item number 43J, 43.1 JA.
Get it together, folks.
So while they're doing that, members of the jury, you might be wondering legitimately, why are they doing all this now, all wrapped up? Why didn't they open it up before, that kind of thing? Some of you might be wondering that. The reason is,
Chain of evidence.
that they don't open up is that the evidence is preserved. You've heard testimony about how it's marked, the tape is marked. So they're required to keep it sealed until they bring it into court just to preserve the integrity of the evidence. We call it chain of custody and other things. So it has to be opened up in open court for those purposes, so.
Item inside that box. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
And what item number does that correspond to on Exhibit 112.1?
I believe it's 43.1JA.
And what's that item?
It's a jacket from the decedent.
You're going to move to admit Government Exhibit 112.1.
The jacket from the decedent.
No objection.
Decedent, the one who passed.
112.
Detective Enzi, can you be careful and you keep it over the table too, so.
I wish we had the live feed. We could have
Unravel
seen
that
it.
and hold it up for the jury, Detective.
They are doing it
This is
very
the
carefully and
jacket that
properly.
You received and it's from the decedent.
Correct.
Is this the same condition you saw it in when you did your analysis?
Yes.
Can you flip it around for the jury? Keep it over the paper because it.
You're keeping it over the paper just in case something falls off.
You can have. Those are the items that, and the shell cases that you received at DPS for analysis.
Correct.
And when you do analysis, what do you do with those items? Walk us through the process.
On the items where I was looking for blood, I break it up into two parts. The first is a visual examination. I'm looking for reddish-brown staining. I can just look visually with the naked eye, but I do also have a number of tools I can use to help me with that. Once I isolate stains that I feel are potentially blood, I move to our preliminary chemical test, meaning I'm taking a small sample of that stain, I'm applying 2 fairly colorless chemicals, and in the presence of blood, I'm expecting a bright pink color change within 10 seconds. If I don't get that color change, I'm reporting it as negative for blood.
Okay, so let's just walk through, do you recall your testing on each of these items and the
I do.
results?
The boots were negative for blood.
We'll just do it one at a time. So Government Exhibit 83, which is the defendant's boots.
So item 17.1JA were the boots.
Exhibit, oh, I'm sorry, that was my bad.
Those were negative for blood.
Government Exhibit 87, which is item 17.5JA.
Those are the work gloves. Those were also negative for blood.
Government Exhibit 89, which is item number 17.7JA.
Those were the jeans, also negative for blood,
Jeans belonging to whom?
to Mr. Kelly.
And
So Mr. Kelly was negative for blood.
Government Exhibit 103, 104, 105, 106, those are the shell casings?
I didn't do any analysis on those. I swabbed them to preserve the DNA.
Okay, I'm going to scoot back a little.
These are-
Of our preliminary chemical test, meaning I'm taking a small sample of that stain, I'm applying 2 fairly colorless chemicals, and in the presence of blood, I'm expecting a bright pink color change within 10 seconds. If I don't get that color change, I'm reporting it as negative for blood.
Okay, so let's just walk through, do you recall your testing on each of these items and the
I do.
results?
The boots were negative for blood.
We'll just do it one at a time. So Government Exhibit 83, which is the defendant's boots.
So item 17.1JA were the boots.
Exhibit,
were-
oh, I'm sorry, that was my bad.
Those were negative for blood.
Government Exhibit 87, which is item 17.5JA.
Those are the work gloves. Those were also negative for blood.
Government Exhibit 89, which is item number 17.7JA.
Those were the jeans, also negative for blood,
Jeans belonging to whom?
to Mr. Kelly.
And Government Exhibit 103, 104, 105, 106, those are the shell casings?
I didn't do any analysis on those. I swabbed them to preserve the DNA.
And why didn't you do any analysis on the shell casings?
Our lab policy is if we're going to do touch or trace DNA testing on an item, it needs to be what we call foreign to the scene, meaning it's there at the scene because of the incident. So, for example, if there was a burglary and someone broke into a store using a tool and left that tool behind, the tool is there because of the incident. We would do DNA on that item. On the shell casings, we knew they were in the home prior to this event, therefore they don't
Bingo!
qualify for DNA testing.
Like I said, why are they
And how
testing? It
about
belonged to him. They knew
Exhibit
it belonged to him. There's no need.
112.1, which is item number
Good way to explain it.
43.1JA, the jacket.
That one, I did do blood testing on it, but in this case, it was because I was trying to avoid blood. I was trying to swab for touch or trace DNA, and the jacket was positive for blood.
And when you do a testing and there's a what's the testing for, to see if it's the victim's blood or someone else's blood?
It's dependent on the scenario. Specifically for the jacket, we didn't do DNA testing on the blood. I only did the serology preliminary testing to state that, yes, this is blood. We are assuming that the source is the decedent, and I was trying to sample in an area outside of that blood or outside of that red-brown staining.
See, so for hair,
And I
skin
forgot to do this
of the
earlier, but
potential,
we're gonna do it real quick. Detective Ianza,
attacker.
can you get Government Exhibit 101 and 102 both have been admitted? 101 is the rifle, and 102 is the magazine and ammo. Both have been admitted. You can stay there, Ms. Brophy. Did you also do testing on a rifle and a magazine ammo?
For those items, I also swabbed and took DNA collections, but I didn't do any other testing on them.
Detective, can you open that up for us?
Okay, you gotta have an aha moment here somewhere, y'all. I know they gotta go through this, but everything they have brought with any expert witness has been negative. Nothing to show just cause for this trial in my eyes. I'm looking very hard. I'm trying. Now, once again, when the defendant gets up there, I'll be just as pokey on them as well. But right now, I'm just not seeing it, y'all. All the forensics get negative, negative, negative. No bullet. No lead residue was found on the tree limb that they thought was broken by a bullet that shot through.
Item 101.
No blood on the
Or
pants or the
broken
shoes of Mr. Kelly.
Ms. Brophy, does that look like the
Okay, here's the
and
rifle.
item number
Why are you pointing it straight? You should be pointing it
21.
down.
JA that
Thank you for
offered
joining me. I really
a
appreciate it. I
analysis on?
hope you enjoy this.
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Detective.
This is a little different view. We did not have a live feed, so this was
Can you get
recorded earlier.
103 for me, or 102, I'm sorry, 102.
Okay, so we saw the gun with a green, army green strap.
And when you're done with your zoology test, you hand off items to who? Who you hand the items off to?
I store them in our frozen storage, and the next person who will take ownership of them is our DNA analyst.
Okay, here, Detective Ianza is opening up Government Exhibit 102. Can you list those items? Can you walk over to Ms. Brophy or hold them up so Ms. Brophy can see them? You want to come down? They're in a bag, Ms. Brophy. Do you recognize item Government Exhibit 102?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that item?
I have my markings on the bag as well as our department record number and the item number.
Okay, you can sit down. That was good exercise, right? Again, you also indicated that you had 2 buccal swabs from the defendant.
Yes, the swabs from the inside of the mouth for the known standards.
It's
And
so
what's that for?
degrading
What's the
having
known
to do
standard?
that.
What's the collection of that for?
When our DNA analyst is performing work, they'll create a profile and they'll need something to compare it to. So for anybody that's associated in the case, we ask for a known DNA sample.
And then we also have a DNA patch.
Correct.
Okay, guys, I gotta pause here. Not necessarily just the truth. When you are arrested in some situations and cases, and depending on the state, they take a DNA sample from you, especially if you're convicted. This really sucks for him.
With the buccal swabs. Do you remember who those were from?
The buccal swabs were from Mr. Kelly.
They're called buccal, not buccal, buccal.
Correct.
And then the DNA patch.
Was from the decedent.
And how about the
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
decedent? And then I've made a poor record, so the buccal swabs are items 35JA, correct?
Correct.
And what's the item number for the DNA patch from the victim?
I believe it's 38JA, but can I refer
Sure.
to the notes? It's 38JA1.
And then you also, there's another swab from the left shoulder of the victim?
There were 2 swabs collected from the jacket.
And then one of, So which items are we going to refer to?
My item number 43.1JA.1 was a swab collected from the left shoulder. 43.1JA.2 was a swab collected from the right sleeve.
And when we talk about shoulder and sleeve, are we referring to Government Exhibit 112, which was the jacket?
Yes.
And the only item that had, what was the only item that had blood on it?
The jacket. Correct.
And when they're done with that analysis, so since you're on the stand, when they're done with that, does it, all of it come back to you?
No, it's placed in our frozen storage when they're done with their analysis.
And do you know the process at DPS and how that material gets returned back to the investigating agency?
The physical items themselves will be returned after I take my collections. I'll take the best sample, so I don't need to keep the entire item. Anything else that is stored in frozen storage, we keep indefinitely unless the agency requests us to return those specific samples to them.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
No, no, tada, nanaha.
Good morning.
What was the waste of all this time?
Okay, I'd like to go over a little bit of some of the stuff that you're
Oh,
talking
she's
about.
going to be good.
So,
Now maybe I'll wake
you're
up.
not the person that signed off on this report, correct?
Correct.
So you don't actually do the testing, you just collect?
I'm doing any serology testing, so any of the blood testing, but none of the DNA testing.
So you're testifying to something you didn't do.
Okay, so if I go out of your knowledge, let me know, okay? Now, serology, for people that may not know, is blood, right?
When we're
Yes.
referring to forensic serology, we're talking about body fluids, which could be blood, semen, or saliva.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. And so you tested of my clients, for blood on his boots, his gloves, and his jeans, correct?
That's correct.
And you have a jacket, which you said you would presume, since it's a gunshot wound that did affect the back side and the chest area, that the blood would be presumed to be that decedent's blood, his jacket, correct?
There was no testing, but that was our assumption.
Because of the presumption.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, if you had different facts where two people were bleeding and rolling together, then you would test.
Correct.
Okay, but in this case, you just, although you have DNA, is that what a DNA patch is?
That's the standard, yes.
And why do they call it a patch?
It's on a paper filter that's a round filter, and it's the term we use. It could either be a blood blot, is one term, or a blood patch.
And that's done by the medical examiner's office?
They're the ones who collect that.
So that's their protocol to do that, to provide it for further testing?
I'm
They
not sure
cut
their
a
protocol,
square
but
or a
standard
circle
from the
of the
books.
clothing.
But
It's
they
long
don't,
enough
do
to
they
like to do
ever, or
DNA
have you
test.
ever seen the swab that would be similar to what might have been done to Mr. Kelly here?
Not in my memory, no.
Okay, so the decedent gets patched, and the other checking of contributors, subjects that might be under scrutiny for that, gets swabbed. Is that normal?
Correct.
Okay.
So they didn't
And
swap
when you
the
swab, you think of it like a
decedent
giant
with-
Q-tip,
for DNA.
Yes.
and you put it inside their mouth and roll it around the inside of the cheek,
Correct.
correct?
The inside of both cheeks, yes.
Okay, you do one for, and you do both sides.
Officers collect them in different ways. Sometimes we get one, sometimes we get four. As long as it's a sample from the cheek, we can use it.
And DNA is pretty miraculous in the sense that you can separate whatever you need as far as things that are, elements that are inside something, correct?
I'll let the DNA analyst
Okay,
answer those.
thank you for that clarity. And so, you had a sample of Mr. Kelly's swab.
Correct.
And those are the only two things that you've been asked to compare and look for serology signs of any kind of blood or other items.
Can you rephrase the question?
Well, so once you got the only two items that you received to compare or to check would have been the patch and the swab from Mr. Kelly.
In other words, they did not get a DNA sample from the victim to compare
Do any comparison.
to the blood.
Right. So although you said there's negative, that's still your job to check for blood.
On the standards, I don't do any type of testing for that. On the items, there was a request to look for blood, so that's what I was doing for the physical items.
And that's part of your job set.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
She looked for the blood, but she
once
didn't touch
there's
the DNA.
blood determined, if there was, and there wasn't in this case with Mr. Kelly's items, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But had there been, then that would have gone to the next person that would have tested the DNA.
Yes.
Okay, so it stops there, but it really stopped there because there was no blood on his items.
Correct.
And we already knew the blood on the victim's items, the deceased, would be present. That's just a given.
That's our assumption.
Yes. And so we only have these three items that were tested for blood?
The judge needs to fix his hair. It's driving me
The gloves
crazy. He
and
looks
the
like a
jeans.
rooster.
Of the defendants, yes.
Okay.
He looks
I have
tired.
nothing further from this witness.
Redirect examination.
Yes,
Really?
so briefly, Ms. Brophy, on the examinations you do, are they done by scientifically approved methods?
Yes, they are.
And you've been doing this job for how long?
Specifically serology for 8 years.
All right, that's all the questions I have.
Any questions for this witness, any of the jurors?
All of this is helping the defense.
I see none. Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
They did not test for the DNA of the victim. They did not test multiple places on the blood, because what if somebody else was hurt and it got on his shirt and in his blood? There's so many variables here, and I don't see how this has helped the defense in any way. Honestly, I don't have a, oh yeah, there you go. Aha, don't have it. I'm gonna speed it up,
Thank you very much.
turn it up.
Good morning, Ms. Rivera-Reyes.
Good morning.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Heather Rivera-Reyes, and I am a forensic scientist working at the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
Miss,
Another scientist.
can you spell your last name for us, for the record?
Yes, Rivera-Reyes.
Now, Ms. Rivera-Reyes, how long have you worked, can I say DPS?
Yes,
How long have you worked for DPS?
I've been employed with DPS for just over 11 years.
Too long.
And before that?
Before that, I was a college student.
Oh.
Oh, he came straight out of college.
Yes, I attended the University of Arizona, where I obtained 2 degrees, a Bachelor's of Science degree in molecular and cellular biology, and a professional science master's degree in applied bioscience.
And then you were hired by DPS?
Yes, I interned with the Tucson Police Department for approximately 6 months, and then I did an internship with DPS for approximately a year before my official employment.
And then what was your first job at DPS? Do you recall? After the internship?
I do. I was actually hired on as a laboratory technician.
What does a laboratory technician do?
They help doing orders of the laboratory, so gloves, they do dishes. It's a very entry-level position.
Ew,
You
please,
moved
stop.
your way up?
I did. I then became what it was referred to at the time as a associate criminalist. Now it's an associate forensic scientist, and that's pretty much a year of training.
A year of training to be your position now?
Correct. I did a year of training and I became a serologist, who is an individual who can identify bodily fluids and analyze items of evidence and prepare them for a DNA analyst. Several years after that, I went through DNA training that consisted of lectures, readings of DNA-related material. It then proceeded into a practical phase where I analyzed items of evidence. It then concluded with a practical oral and written examination before I was actually able to conduct DNA analysis on casework.
And I think the jury has some familiarity with DNA, and what does DNA stand for?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's a genetic blueprint of life. So it gives all of us living organisms instructions on how to develop and how to function. We get half of our DNA from our biological mother and half from our biological father. And DNA is unique from individual to individual, with the exception of identical siblings.
And in your practical position, DPS, is that what you're doing now? Is the practice of the DNA analysis?
Yes, I conduct DNA analysis at the Arizona Department of Public Safety's crime laboratory.
All right, we'll get into what that is, but how many of those cases and how many of those things have you done in your career at DPS?
For serology, well over 1,000 items. For DNA, I would say anywhere between 800 and 900 samples.
So they're just qualifying her.
And what goes into a DNA analysis?
The DNA analysis is actually a 4-step process. So the first step would be extraction of a sample. So at this point, when I receive evidence, a serologist, again, someone who is identifying bodily fluids and prepping that sample for me, I extract the sample. That means I remove all the DNA and from everything else, from the substrate, whether it be a swab, which is a sterile Q-tip, or a cutting from a piece of fabric. I then go to the second step, which is quantification. And that portion, I am measuring how much DNA is present, if any DNA is there. This information allows me to go to the amplification step, which is essentially just a Xerox machine for DNA. It's going to copy the DNA, if it's there, millions and millions of times. The fourth step is to place this amplified product onto a genetic analyzer, and this will separate the DNA and also measure the DNA, because when I copied it, I copied 23 specific regions on the DNA that are...
Why is there sound dropping?
And the separation process will measure the lengths of DNA. And all these numbers, or the measurements compiled together, make a DNA profile.
And when you do a DNA profile, is one of the goals to identify what the sample, who owns the sample, who the sample belongs to?
There are several possible outcomes, identification or inclusion, when I compare a profile obtained from an item of evidence, and I compare that to an individual that's related in a case. It can be an inclusion, meaning those two profiles match. There can be an exclusion, where the profiles do not match. There could be an inconclusive, meaning there's just not enough data there to determine if there's an inclusion or an exclusion. And there's also the possibility of no results, so there was no DNA there.
And when you do the inclusion, exclusion, is one of the goals too is to compare if you've got different DNA?
Yes, I usually compare it to any reference or known samples of associated individuals in the case.
Let's jump to this case. Were you asked to do any DNA profiling on this case?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember what this case is? Do you recall?
I do, yes.
Do you know who you have a case number? I have reports if you need to refresh your recollection.
Yes, that would refresh my memory.
And permission to approach?
Yeah, she doesn't have the report memorized. I know they have to do this, but it's like, oh gosh, come on,
Are
please.
those reports familiar to you?
Yes, they are.
Can you refresh your recollection of the case number that you worked on, with the case number assigned to that case?
The DPS case number is 20237022235.
Do we have an associated name?
Yes, Mr. George Kelly.
And you were asked to do, as you just described, you were asked to do a DNA profile on samples that were provided to you.
Correct.
And just so we know, is where do you get your items to do the sampling from?
These samples were prepared by my colleague, Cassandra Brophy.
And so she walks it down the hallway and says, here's some stuff to look at?
She performs her portion of the analysis and then places these items of evidence that she prepared for in our laboratory frozen storage. When I come to the time where I'm ready to perform my portion of the analysis, I check those items out of the freezer, similar to how you would check out a book from the library. So everything's documented on a chain of custody.
And do you recall how many items you checked out that was provided by Ms. Brophy?
Yes, I checked out 2 items.
Do you have the items numbers available to you? If you want to refresh your recollection, you can.
Thank you. Yes, they are item 43.1JA.1. That is one swab from the left shoulder of a jacket. The second item was item 43.1JA.2, and that is one swab from the right sleeve of a jacket.
And what did you do with those 2 items?
Those 2 items I performed DNA analysis on.
And what was your conclusions on those DNA analysis?
For the swab on the left shoulder, I had a mixture of 2 individuals. The first individual was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Mr. Gabriel Butimea. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I think so.
The victim?
The
Please don't tell me Mr.
swab
Kelly.
from the right sleeve was a single source profile, meaning there was only one individual there, and that was consistent with the DNA profile from Mr. Gabriel Butimea.
Well, let's go back to the first one, 43.1JA.1. That was a swab done on the left shoulder of a jacket.
Yes.
On that swab, you just indicated that there was 2 DNA profiles,
Yes, there was.
one belonging to the victim, Gabrielle.
Correct.
Is there any analysis or any result of the other one?
Yes, I apologize. I skipped over that. The second contributor was a very low-level profile. And in comparisons to the DNA profile obtained from Mr. George Kelly, the results were inconclusive, meaning there is not enough information there to determine if there was an inclusion or an exclusion.
Any other items that you checked out, or was just that one? Or 2, I'm sorry.
Those were the 2 items that I performed DNA analysis on.
And when you do your DNA analysis, are you doing that based on generally accepted scientific methods?
Yes, I am.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Just on the 2, you're
Oh, I'm
referring to
sorry.
2 items. I understood it coming from the same item, a jacket, or they come from 2 different items?
No, Your Honor, I'll clean this up. So the 2 swabs, we have 2 swabs, right?
Correct.
One swab is labeled 43.1JA.1.
Yes.
And that's the swab from left side of a jacket.
Correct. The left shoulder of the jacket.
And the other swab comes from the same jacket, but it's on the right-hand sleeve of the jacket.
That's correct.
And that item number is 43.1JA.2.
Yes.
So they come from the same item, 2 different locations on the garment.
Correct. 2 different locations.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so to simplify a little bit, backing up just a drop, all of the clothing that was presented from Mr. Kelly, the boots, the work gloves, and jeans, because it was tested negative for serology, that stopped your interest in testing further on those clothing. Is that correct?
Yes, the boots, the gloves, and the jeans all tested presumptive negatively for the presence of blood, so no further testing was done.
Okay. Now, what's left for you to test, I'm simplifying this, tell me if I'm wrong. What's left for you to test would be looking to the deceased clothing, which happens to be a jacket, correct?
Correct.
And determining whether, is there anyone else's DNA on the jacket, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you set aside Mr. Kelly's clothing. We're now looking at the deceased jacket. And you talked about 2 locations that was swabbed. Is that correct?
Correct. And when I say an item was swabbed, not all items can fit in a tube for me to perform DNA analysis on. So a swab is taken, again, a sterile Q-tip, and that swab is rubbed against an item with the goal of transferring any potential DNA that's on the item onto the swab so that I can then do DNA analysis on the swab itself.
Thank you. Now, if I've heard right from the testimony before you, your assistant that did the initial part, I believe the goal was to test somewhere where there was no blood from the decedent, correct?
That was the goal, yes.
Okay, so that is what helped you choose a location on the jacket, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So since the wounds in this case appear to be the right shoulder backside and the chest area, that's where you see the blood on the jacket. It's in line with those areas, correct?
Correct.
So you went up higher, and you got the shoulder sleeve area?
Yes, the serologist Cassandra Brophy swabbed areas that were not saturated with blood. That was the left shoulder area towards the back and the right sleeve area.
Now tell me if I'm right or wrong, but is it true that at this point, you're not testing other blood on that jacket, you're looking for some other type, and I'll get to it in a minute, but just a yes or no, other type of DNA that might be found on there, correct?
Yes, my portion of the analysis is the DNA comparison portion.
Could that DNA come from skin?
That's a possibility, yes.
So if I rub my hands, am I creating the potential of DNA on another object?
Yes, if you touch an item, for example, if I touch right here, I have the potential to leave my DNA on this podium.
What other kind of DNA, knowing what you know about the case, that this is a shooting, there's blood on the jacket, based on your location, what kind of DNA would you suspect? You got skin, what other things? I mean, you wouldn't expect saliva there, right?
I wouldn't expect saliva given the information that I had. I would, the amount of blood present on the jacket and the potential of blood flaking, I would imagine that there would be
Excuse me.
blood as well.
Okay, so if someone's touching the blood of the deceased, then you're thinking there could be blood flaking, but the blood would be the deceased, but you're saying the contact with the skin of the person could mix together?
Yes.
Yes, that's a possibility. Skin cells could have been deposited on the shirt as well, or the jacket, excuse me.
Was there testing at the locations of the jacket that was selected on the two shoulders? Was there any testing to see if there was blood at that location?
Yes, there was.
And was there blood on that location?
Both tested positive for blood as well.
So the shoulders had blood.
Yes.
Now, that could still very well be multiple reasonings, right? I mean, it could be just the blood of the decedents, right?
Correct.
Did you test to see if that blood you found was the decedent's?
No.
The serologist collected a swab from these areas that didn't have saturation of blood. However, the item was packaged, from my reading of the notes, in a brown paper bag and it was folded. So with the nature of dried blood, it does tend to flake. So there could have been transfer from an area that was saturated with blood.
But you didn't
and
compare
that,
the
in
blood
combination
sample
any
with the
potential
victims or anybody
trace of
else's
skin cells
to
that
know.
left in that area would be all DNA tested from the same swab.
So the answer is could be or might not be or is or what?
It's a possibility, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And that was an interesting explanation.
In other words, I didn't ask
So
that. Wah, wah.
if someone was hovering over a body and might have made contact with the blood of the decedent and then moved their hand to another location, then the blood was not exiting from the decedent's body. Are you following me?
Yes.
Kind of lengthy explanation, but that would transfer potentially blood, right?
It could
Yes.
potentially, yes.
Okay. So I would hope that law enforcement would have put gloves on before touching the body, right? There's a good presumption that might have happened, right?
That would be best practice.
It would be smart. But if they didn't, then the law enforcement could be a contributor, correct? Could.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
True, true.
Now, you mentioned something about the numbers not rising to a level to get to a conclusion, that it's inconclusive. What is that about? Explain that a little better for us.
So with the particular swab from the left shoulder, this is a mixture of two individuals. The majority of that mixture is from Mr. Gabriel Buitimea. That second contributor is coming in very low level. So you can kind of think of it as listening to two songs at the same time. And one is playing at a volume of 10 and the other one is playing at a volume of 1. There are portions that you're going to hear that second lower song coming in, but you're going to mostly hear that louder song. So it's very similar in a mixture. When you have an individual who's contributing a significant amount more DNA than a second contributor, you're going to potentially get a full profile from that first one and a very, very partial profile from that second contributor. So that's what happened in this case. That second contributor is extremely low level. So when I do a comparison to that profile to the known profile for Mr. George Kelly, it's inconclusive. Again, meaning there's just not enough information there to make an inclusion or an exclusion.
Can blood from the main contributor kind of wash out the contributor, let's say, of skin cells?
Yes, that's a possibility as well.
So in a hypothetical situation, if I was to grab someone with my right hand, let's say by the handles of a backpack, which you never tested, right?
I did not test any backpack.
And grab with my left hand the shoulder of the jacket and try to pull someone. Is that a possible explanation? To the shoulder being skin cells.
It's a possibility, yes.
So someone appeared to make contact at the left shoulder.
Yes, there was a source of a second individual on the jacket.
And even though Mr. Kelly is the only one being analyzed, you cannot sit there with any type of certainty and testify that there is a different subject, an alternate subject that could have touched this man, correct?
I did not do any comparisons to any other individual.
Because you can't tell with this sample whether it's my client or some third person, correct?
Correct. There's just not enough information there.
So just because, I just want to make it clear to the jurors that just because there seems to be someone touch it, it could be anyone, because we don't have a comparison sample for that either, right?
Correct, I did not compare it.
Could have been the sheriff.
And even if we knew that another neighboring person
Could have been
that was there might have touched, had you been given that sample of that person, you still would have not been able to know for sure, right? Because of the amount of DNA left on the jacket?
That's correct, it was very low level, so it's likely that a comparison would still be inconclusive.
And so if you learn there was one in the narratives that you're provided, and there's a little bit of a narrative given to you about what law enforcement thinks some of the facts are, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So it gives you a basis of what's going on so you know where to test, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But if you were given a narrative, there were one or two or other three people that were next to this body, you're saying even if you got their DNA, you wouldn't have been able to do anything different?
I would have compared the DNA profile from any associated individual to that. It is very low level, so I would say the likelihood of any inclusion or exclusion is actually not likely. It's just very low level.
Well, you said not likely, so there's always a possibility. I'm looking at it in the reverse. And so if there was a known subject next to the body, and they grabbed his jacket, left some cells or something on there, maybe blood and cells, whatever, right? And the blood might be the decedent's. Why would there be a chance that testing might have showed something?
It just depends on the DNA profile from that theoretical individual that's being associated with it. Again, it's low level, so it's very unlikely that there would yield an inclusion or an exclusion. It's more than likely going to be inconclusive because of the insufficient DNA that was present from that second contributor.
And I get that that's more likely. I'm just kind of curious a little bit more. Why would another contributor, that hypothetical person, that could have been right next to the body, what about their DNA might have helped a little bit more to see if you could overcome this inconclusive test? What would make the difference of that DNA versus Mr. Kelly's DNA?
I would not treat that any different. I would analyze the item, obtain a DNA profile, and do a comparison as well.
Pass the witness.
Redirect examination. Briefly.
So in other words, that DNA could have come earlier
Just
that morning
unclear.
with the lady at a restaurant
just
could have
unclear.
rubbed against him.
We can't exclude the defendant in the sampling. We're talking about the left shoulder,
Oh.
right?
Oh,
Correct.
you
Be
can't.
excluded.
And it would be nice if we could turn the volume up on that one sample, but we just don't have it, right?
Correct. There's just not enough DNA.
There's reasonable doubt.
And there were some indications about someone else being near the body, like officers. You heard that cross-examination?
Yes, I heard that.
And you don't know if they have gloves on or not, do you?
I do not know. I was not there.
The proper protocol would be to have gloves on, right?
That's correct.
Not to touch strike that, Your Honor. No more questions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness from any of the jurors? We do have at least one. All right.
This is more as a housekeeping day. I'm sorry it's not that exciting. But it has to be done, but there's a jury question. I'm going to skim through. There we go.
Question from one of the jurors. For the second source of blood on the jacket, was animal blood ruled out?
Yes.
So as part of the DNA process, the entire sample or that swab from that region was tested for DNA analysis. So that did test presumptively positive for the presence of blood. From my knowledge of the case and information I was given to perform my analysis, there was only one bleeder. So the potential and the amount of DNA indicates that it was more likely a skin cell source. And can you repeat the last portion of the question, please?
Well, if for the second source of blood on the jacket was animal blood ruled out, and I think we could expand on that to include the possibility of DNA from an animal.
So,
On the DNA that was found.
so the type of technology I use to perform DNA testing is specific to human DNA.
Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you. All right, any follow-up from the state? And I'll give the, excuse me, I'm going to give the juror's question to the clerk for filing.
So on the sample on the left shoulder, we have 2 DNA profiles, one high volume, one low volume, and your testing shows both coming from human sources.
That's correct.
No more questions, Your
Defense.
But it also
Clarify what kind of possibility of blood. Was there also any testing on like male versus female?
No, there was not.
Nothing further.
Anything else? Thank you. Anything else from the jurors?
y'all,
Very well. Thank you.
they're not even coming into the fact that there was a gentleman with him, supposedly when he got shot, who touched him. Next witness, another scientist.
Good morning, Ms. Hickman.
Good morning.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes. My name is Cindy Starr Hickman. I am a latent print forensic scientist at the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
And just for the record, can you spell your last name for the report?
Fingerprints.
Yes.
On the bullet.
Hickman.
Let's talk about your background. You work currently for Department
Y'all, we're going to skim through background. We don't need to hear all that.
Basically, that position is I am laboratory support. So I prepare reagents and order supplies, anything that the forensic scientist or the admin needed, I was there to help. And when an opportunity opened up for me to actually become a forensic scientist, I jumped actually.
No worries. I speak fast too. So the last part of your career doing latent print analysis, what's the training process that you go through to be qualified to do that for DPS?
It was about 1.5 years long. It was an in-house training process in which I learned how to process various items of mock evidence. So I was getting different sort of surfaces and hundreds and hundreds of different items to practice getting used to using different techniques and the different surfaces. I also trained in how to do comparisons. So I did thousands of comparisons to get my eye trained on latent prints. I also had some training in the automated search system, and that is where I searched latent prints through an automated search system. I also had
evaluation. The testers know what the results are, and they're testing whether or not you meet those results.
Yes.
And obviously, you don't know that your job is to test, and they test you.
They test me, correct.
And in your 17-year career, really focusing on the latent print stuff, how many cases have you worked on for DPS?
I have been in the latent print a couple hundred at this point. It's made up of 4 different crimes.
With the 4 sections of DPS Crime Lab.
So,
I'm just
crime lab,
skimming
which is in
through this,
Phoenix.
y'all. We don't
We have
need
the
to-
Northern Crime Lab, which is in Flex.
People just like you, Ms. Hickman.
Yes, they do.
And you guys.
It's a peer group where we can get together and discuss on things. And each individual that has been signed off as a forensic scientist had to go through this competency testing as well.
And the testing you do for latent prints, is that generally accepted scientific methodology that you apply?
Yes, it is.
And Ms. Hickman, I've got reports up here, so in case I ask you a quick case.
Yes, I was.
Do you remember the case number that you worked on?
Yes. 2023-702-235.
And do you remember the subject of that analysis?
I was asked to do latent print analysis. I actually received 2 different requests, and those requests are just sheets that are asking you to do various analysis on different forms of evidence. So I received 2 requests to process evidence for latent prints.
And that's a perfect answer to my question, but it was a poorly worded question. So do you know who the subject, the defendant, the person associated with that DPS case?
Oh, yes, the associated individual was a George Kelly.
And do you remember the item numbers that you tested for latent prints?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead. I'm not trying to test you. I've got notes here in case you need it, so this is
Okay,
impressive. So,
For my first report, I tested 4 cartridge casings, and they were item numbers 26JA, 27JA, 28JA, and 29JA. My second report, I tested a cartridge casing, item 1JA. The second item was a firearm, a rifle with a flashlight attached to it. That was item 21JA. And the third item was 21.1JA, and that was a magazine and 31 cartridges.
all right, I'm going to show you some exhibits.
Well, I think we're going to take our afternoon break. I have some matters I want to discuss, so we don't take everything out and unwrap it and have to wrap it back up, seal it back up. So I have some little work to do with the lawyers. Sorry to do this to you, but it happens. So we'll be in recess until 1:30, the afternoon break. Please remember the admonition of the court. You're excused until 1:30. Thank you. And when they're out, you can step. Thank you. You can be seated. The jurors are absent. I'm just here with counsel. So the ongoing topic is the party's request for jury visitation of the alleged crime scene. I understand that yesterday the counsel were planning, I don't know if you did it or able to do it or not, you're planning on going out to the site and trying to work out whether that can come to an agreement about what can be seen and any procedures to be followed. So who wants to tell me where we're at and how that went?
Well, Your Honor, I'll start.
I'll hear from everybody. It doesn't matter. I'll hear from you next.
It's nice to go first instead of second all the time. We did go out there, and I thought it went well. We all walked the grounds and allowed the state to look at what they wanted to see. We have ideas on how to possibly do this, and the ideas were to document, to get markers that were provided by the detective, which we have in our possession now. They're numbered, just like a crime scene placard. And we would station it and come up with a list so they could be taken from number 1 to number 2, et cetera, to the different locations on the Kelly's Ranch that starts with the house possibly and works its way outside. So that was a thought that I didn't hear any disagreement, and the detective provided us with those placards. So that's where we got to. We haven't created the list, but I think we could, kind of haggle that out a little bit.
And you said house, did you say inside the house and then going outside?
Yes, so we'll start just like the Kellys were that afternoon, where, so they could see the kitchen, the living room, the hallway, the door they exited, and proceed that way.
Okay.
And that's correct, Your Honor. I want to send an appreciation for the defendant's family for allowing us to be in their home. So number 2 is defense is correct. We have placards. We're going to go station placards from one station to another station to another station. They have not yet sent us an email about the exact locations and what the description would be, if there's going to be a description on those placards. So, we also anticipate that jurors were not going to be asking questions. They would go from one station to another station to another. The only issue the government has is 2. One is the scene of where the victim's body was located. It seemed like there was a significant grazing going on. Nothing wrong with that, but significant grazing, which changed the vegetation from what the photo show where the dead body was found versus what the actual viewing is now. Significant grazing, no allegation on that, just significant grazing, which there's no vegetation, which replicates the scene in January of 2023. And the other issue would be travel to the border. And so that is a logistical issue, and we're still working with counsel on that. But I just want to bring that to court's attention.
No, thank you. Just going backwards, on the travel to the border, tell me more about that. So, well, first, it sounds like what you told me, there's just some logistical issues to be worked out, but from that I infer that there's no basic objection to if those logistical issues can be worked out, that there's no objection to the jurors going to some location near the border to see the border.
Yeah, as long as we get the logistics worked out and the court has no issue with it, if the court wants to go preview what we have in mind, the government has no objection to that.
I see no need for me to preview. What are the logistical issues? And is it a terrain issue, transportation, or distance?
Distance, and it's by foot, by vehicle. I mean, so when you're at the Kelly Ranch, to take roads back, I mean, obviously, we're not going to have jurors walk the terrain up and down washes. And so we have an issue of, are we commuting on a Forest Service road or a BP road or some other road to the border? And so and what path do we take? Like I said, that's logistical, and so we can work it out with defense.
But I mean, again, I've obviously never been out there. Are there roads that lead to the location where we would agree to take the jurors?
Yeah, you can snake your way to there.
So you don't need any kind of special four-wheel drive or anything like that?
No, you should not need a special four-wheel drive.
Okay. And how far, well, more or less, we've heard testimony about how far as the crow flies, but.
By drive, I think it's about 5-6 minute drive.
2 minutes at best.
Okay. So it sounds like you made a lot of progress, but.
Still have not. Well, do you anticipate there being any disagreement about?
Sorry, guys.
It doesn't sound like it.
I'm going to come back a little bit because I had to leave
And
the
if I may
room for a
address
moment.
his other concern about
That are asking you to do various analysis on different forms of evidence. So I received 2 requests to process evidence for latent prints.
And that's a perfect answer to my question, but it was a poorly worded question. So do you know who the subject, the defendant, the person associated with that DPS case?
Oh, yes, the associated individual was a George Kelly.
And do you remember the item numbers that you tested for latent prints?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead. I'm not trying to test you. I've got notes here in case you need it. So this
Okay,
is
thank you. For my first report, I tested 4 cartridge casings, and they were item numbers 26JA, 27JA, 28JA, and 29JA. My second report, I tested a cartridge casing, item 1JA. The second item was a firearm, a rifle with a flashlight attached to it. That was item 21JA. And the third item was 21.1JA, and that was a magazine and 31 cartridges.
All right, I'm going to show you some exhibits.
Well, I think we're going to take our afternoon break. I have some matters I want to discuss, so we don't take everything out and unwrap it and have to wrap it back up, seal it back up. So I have some little work to do with the lawyers. Sorry to do this to you, but it happens. So we're going to recess until 1:30, the afternoon break. Please remember the admonition of the court. You're excused until 1:30. Thank you. When they're out, you can step.
I wish we had the afternoon session, but they've not posted yet.
Thank you. You can be seated. The jurors are absent. I'm just here with counsel. So the ongoing topic is the party's request for jury visitation of the alleged crime scene. I understand that yesterday the council were planning, I don't know if you did it, able to do it or not, you're planning on going out to the site and trying to work out whether or not you can come to an agreement.
I was hoping
about
that's what they did today, but they
and
didn't.
procedures to be followed. So who wants to tell me where we're at, how that went?
Well, Your Honor, I'll start.
I'll hear from everybody. It doesn't matter.
It's nice to go first instead of second all the time. We did go up there, and I thought it went well. We all walked the grounds and allowed the state to look at what they wanted to see. We have ideas on how to possibly do this, and the ideas were to document, to get markers that were provided by the detective, which we have in our possession now. They're numbered, just like a crime scene placard. And we would station it and come up with a list so they could be taken from number 1 to number 2, et cetera, to the different locations on the Kelly's Ranch that starts with the house possibly and works its way outside. So that was a thought that I didn't hear any disagreement, and the detective provided us with those placards. So that's where we got to. We haven't created the list, but I think we could, kind of haggle that out a little bit.
And you said house, did you say inside the house and then going outside?
Yes, so we'll start, just like the Kellys were that afternoon, where, so they could see the kitchen, the living room, the hallway, the door they exited, and proceed that way.
Okay.
And that's great, Your Honor. I want to send an appreciation for the defendant's family for allowing us to be in their home. So Number two is defense is correct. We have placards. We're going to go station placards from one station to another station to another station. They have not yet sent us an email about the exact locations and what the description would be, if there's going to be a description on those placards. So, because we also anticipate that jurors were not going to be asking questions. They would go from one station to another station to another. The only issue the government has is two. One is the scene of where the victim's body was located. It seemed like there was a significant grazing going on in the nothing wrong with that. The significant grazing was changed the vegetation from what the photo show, where the dead body was found, versus what the actual viewing is.
Dude, get on the mic.
Grazing. Nope. No allegation on that, just significant grazing, which there's no vegetation, which replicates the scene in January of 2023. The other issue would be travel to the border. And so that is a logistical issue, and we still working with counsel on that. But I just want to bring that to the court's attention.
Yeah, thank you.
Get on the
Just
mic.
going backwards, on the travel to the border, tell me more about that. So, well, first, it sounds like what you told me, there's just some logistical issues to be worked out, but from that I infer that there's no basic objection to, if those logistical issues can be worked out, that there's no objection to the jurors going to some location near the border to see the border.
Yeah, as long as we get the logistics worked out, and the court has no issue with it. If the court wants to go preview what we have in mind, the government has no objection to that.
I see no need for me to preview. What are the logistical issues? And is it a terrain issue, transportation, or distance?
Distance, and it's by foot, by vehicle. I mean, so when you're at the Kelly Ranch, to take roads back, I mean, obviously we're not going to have jurors walk the terrain up and down washes, and so we have an issue of, are we commuting on a forest road or a BP road or some other road to the border? And so that'd be, what do we take? Like I said, that's logistical, and so we can work it out with defense.
But I mean, again, I've obviously never been out there. Are there roads that lead to the location where we would agree to take the jurors?
Yeah, you can snake your way to there.
So you don't need any kind of special four-wheel drive or anything like that?
No, you should not need a special four-wheel drive.
Okay. And how far, well,
Y'all, you're not going to have the jurors walking all the way down to the wash. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So it sounds like you made a lot of progress, but you still have not, would you anticipate there being any disagreement about what the jury's going to see? It doesn't sound like it, but or where where the locations are.
Where's the
And
class?
if I may address his other concern about the grass.
All right.
It did appear to be shorter. We all have photos. And we would even put a stipulation to refer back to the photos of the length of the grass. That's, we can even mark it at the scene where the body was found, that there's a stipulation that the grass was longer. I mean, so we're very amenable about that. We're not trying to show that location for the length of the grass and whatever.
Yeah, and I did not mean to allege that at all, and I completely agree. If there's a stipulation to it, we're fine with that. Yeah.
Do you anticipate any disagreements about, and again, I'm not aware of, I can kind of guess, but not aware of exactly what locations you want them to see? Is there a basic agreement about that? And the reason I'm asking you all these questions is, well, you'll see when we're finished, but is there a basic agreement on that?
Yes, Your Honor, I think so.
I don't anticipate any problems. I think both parties are listening to each other.
All right, very well. So as I mentioned before, I'm glad to hear that. As I mentioned before, this topic has been raised in various hearings. It's been pretty indefinite about whether or not we're going to do this or not.
This is
Now that you've reported to me how things went yesterday, and it sounds like parties are working together, we don't anticipate any issues about what they're going to see or how it's going to be labeled in some neutral way.
I got to tell you, I
Where those
couldn't
items
imagine
are.
people coming to my home and doing
Pursuant
this.
to Rule 122 of the
Well, I can.
the rules of the Supreme Court of Arizona, I'm going to set a hearing. As I said, we've had, I don't know how many, but probably after this discussion right now, we may have more, but we've had many media requests for the media to accompany the jurors in the court on this expedition if it happens. So I'm going to set a hearing on that. It may be late Monday morning, and I'll draft an order. We're writing up an order to that effect. So if there's any media outlets that are
We want to come
watching
along.
this, listening
Field
to it,
trip.
reviewing it, and have an interest in making an application to attend that visitation, assuming it goes, I refer them to the rules of the Supreme Court of Arizona, Rule 122. Look at that. There are certain requirements that have to be met for that your application to be considered. We're going to issue an order, and we will disseminate that order to all the media outlets who have so far requested to accompany.
What happened to the media today?
Obviously, I'm not prejudging whether or not I'll allow it. We'll have a hearing as required by Rule 122. Counsel are invited to be present. Any media representatives are entitled to be present, and we'll hear their applications, we'll hear any objections, and the court will issue a ruling. Maybe not Monday. I'm not sure. I've got to really look at everyone's calendar and the availability of the court reporter, courtrooms, and so forth. But do you agree that if this happens, it will be the last thing that we do as part of this case before the matter is submitted for argument and jury instructions.
Well, anticipating what defense does in their case in chief, if they elect to do anything, we anticipate doing this prior to Detective Aienza taking the stand to allow counsel to ask questions of Detective Aienza on the stand.
Get on the mic.
Yeah, so we were talking about that issue, because you mentioned you were thinking towards the last thing we do. But that doesn't afford the jurors a chance to send any questions about it. They can't talk out there or ask out there. It'll be just, moving them to the different locations that are numbered. And they will have a list of what that was. Like, it'll say the kitchen, Kelly's kitchen, Kelly's living room, whatever. And then they'll find that placard and keep moving. So we were talking about it, that it just doesn't give the jurors a chance to question anything. And so we thought it would be best if it was my thoughts, I think my co-counsel and I agree that maybe if, say, for example, their last witness was their detective, and then we did it right before, and that way any questions can be developed from that locations referring to those numbers, they'll be able to have that visual and be able to ask questions at the end of that witness.
I understand why you want to do that and why. My only question about that is, if there is a defense case, and evidence comes in as part of the defense case that would be relevant to the jury's view of the crime scene, then when they go to the crime scene, the jurors would not be able to take into consideration what evidence the defense presented. Just for example, okay, hypothetically, if Mr. Kelly testifies, of course he has constitutional right to testify or not testify. Hypothetically, if Mr. Kelly testifies and he says, well, no, I wasn't standing there, I was standing there. Okay, I don't think that's an issue in the case, but then how's the jury's not going to see the location when they go out there. If they go out there before Mr. Kelly testifies, if he testifies, they're not going to be able to see the other location where he says he was.
Well, it wouldn't have been marked. I don't know if we were. I see what you're saying, that maybe we would have marked that spot or something. But I think we're just picking locations of the different events and the different items that have been mentioned, and they would have a recall based on their tour already of a visual in their heads what he's talking about if he was to testify.
So they don't want him to testify before the walkthrough.
The only downside I see to what's being proposed here is that if there is a defense case and some other information is raised in the defense case, and it's raised after the jury's visited the scene, then as I said, they're not going to be able to, while they're at the scene, take that into consideration. But that's something that works to the potential prejudice of the defense. So if you don't see a problem with it, then...
Well, I guess there might be an alternative that you're thinking, because in the reverse, and we're not set on one way or the other, we're just worried about what if there was a question or a reference to something, because they can't ask it out there. So how do they get to ask about that location if they had one? And do they just come to the court and then do what we do by letting them ask questions, and we address them privately and then read to them and then give them the answers, but with what witness? And then that's just logistics. I was just trying to figure out how you were proposing that.
Well, it would depend on what kind of questions they have. I mean, and who the witness would be, or witnesses would be, who would have to answer those questions. If there are questions that Detective Aienza could answer, then we could come back here, just as you were describing, at some point, and following the visitation, either the same day or the next day, and be in session and have those questions asked and answered. And that would assume that they're questions that Detective Aienza would be able to answer. But you got to do it sometime. And if you do it too early, then you potentially miss places that they might want to see. That might come up later, but if you do it at the end, it causes some logistical issues also. But anyway, we're going to decide that right now because, well, that having been raised, does the state have some rough estimate? Again, I'm not going to hold you to anything about how much longer your case is going to take.
We anticipate finishing up Wednesday morning.
Next Wednesday morning.
So
Okay.
they have
And I know the
3
defense
more
always
days.
never makes these decisions until all the state's evidence is in, and you can't be any exact, but and if you don't want to,
Okay, that's done. Wow. Okay, so let me go and see if they got this afternoon's posted. I'm not too sure I've got the energy to do it, but I am curious. No, yes, they do. But it's not opening. Why are you not opening? Okay, I don't want to open the sidebar. We're going to do this. We're going to click here. Afternoon session's not posted. Okay. I don't know why they did not have what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know why they did not have a videographer in court today or a live feed, so we're going to have to play catch up. Depending on what happens tomorrow morning, if they've posted today's afternoon, we'll run that. Not much was learned today for me other than the fact that there was no blood found on Mr. Kelly's items, that there was a DNA that was strong victims with a scant of another DNA trace in it. Ballistics, a lot of stuff. I don't see how it changed anything for the prosecution. So with that, we are going to head out. I am going to get me some dinner. And we're going to have a nice evening. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow and hit it again. I don't think we're going to have any magical moments between now and Wednesday. They say they're going to finish up, they hope, Wednesday morning. And then the defense will take it from there. So that's our schedule. Y'all have an awesome day and have a blessed evening. Refresh yourself. Who knows? We may get some excitement tomorrow. In the meantime, good night. Bye-bye.